4, which is just return 0. Copy and paste the return info cell and replace the question mark with the value that we are returning. In this case, it is 0. Do we do anything else on row 12 of the trace? Absolutely nothing else. Okay? So remember, the return statement, when you execute a return statement, its only job is to replace, copy and paste the return info cell, replace the question mark with the value that you're returning, and it's done, as far as the return statement is concerned. Okay? In other words, we do not evaluate what is 2 times n at this point. I don't even know whose n or what is the value of n by the time I execute line 6, because that's none of my concern. My only job is to resolve the question mark. After line 4, we don't have anything else to do in the conditional statement, so we exit and we go to line 8. Line 8 doesn't have a whole lot of stuff to do. All it does is to deallocate the columns that we have allocated for this invocation, and we are done with the last invocation of S1. Where do we go next? How should I proceed with the execution? Well, that's the whole idea of the return info, right? Return info, the whole concept of return info is so that I know what else I have to do. So return info is telling me that I have to go back to line 6. All right, that's easy. We go back to line 6. Now the question is, what do I do on line 6? This is line 6 resolved, or at least partially resolved, depending on how many invocations do we have to deal with. Well, since we only have one, and we are done with that invocation, this becomes the verb. Okay, in terms of English, sentence structure, this is my verb. This is specifying what I should do. Okay, the question is, okay, well, we are executing this statement, but then we have to know we're executing the statement in which context. Well, there are 2 things that requires a concept of a context, because first of all, it refers to n. Okay, which n am I referring to? I cannot be referring to n of column H, because at the time on row 14 of the trace, column H is already gone. Okay, it's already deallocated. So the reference to n has to be referring to column F, which has a value of 1. 2 times 1 minus 1, this entire part is just 1. Then the next question is, what is 0 plus 1? Well, 0 plus 1 is just 1, so the entire statement is just returning 1. When you return 1, you need another thing that requires a context, because to execute return 1, you need to know which return info cell we are dealing with. We cannot be using column G, because column G is already deallocated by the time we get to row 14 of the trace. So the only choice left is column E. That means this is my verb. It tells me what to do. This is the object. This is what I'm acting on. And this is the result. Okay, so let me just spell out the 3 components that are really important in this case. This is my verb. It tells me what action I have to perform. This is my object. It tells me what I'm acting on. This is the result of the action. Are we doing okay so far with those 3 pieces? Yep. No, hold on. Go ahead.
I'm just lost where that 1 came from.
The 1?
Yeah.
The 1 came from the execution of this statement here.
Okay.
When I execute this statement, the n refers to f, right?
Okay.
2 times 1 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1.
Oh, okay.
0 plus 1 is 1.
Okay.
So I'm returning 1. But when you execute, and that's what I'm executing.
Yeah.
I'm executing return 1. When you execute return 1, you have to find out which return info cell you're dealing with. We are dealing with E7 at this point. And when you execute a return statement, you're copying, pasting, and then changing the question mark to the value that we are returning. In this case, 1 is what we are returning.
Yeah, I was just making the mistake of going 1 minus 1 times 2. For some reason, I was putting an n minus 1 in parentheses.
Okay.
Where I was running into the problem. So
Yeah. Okay, but is it okay now? I mean, is it?
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
understand the concept now.
Okay, very good. So are we doing okay so far? Okay, there was another hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Same question.
Same question. Okay, very good. Is it answered?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we do anything else on row 14 of the trace besides copying, pasting, and changing the question mark to a 1? Nothing else. Okay, absolutely nothing else. Line 6 is the only thing I have to do in the else portion, which means by the time I'm done with line 6, I'm done with the entire conditional statement. I get out of the conditional statement, I'm now on line 8. Line 8 is the end of the subroutine. We have to remember to deallocate the columns, just like that. And then we have to go somewhere else. Well, according to the return info, we have to go back to line 6 again. Okay, great. We have to go back to line 6, which means I'm executing line 6 next. The question is, what am I going to do? So once again, you have to identify which cell tells you the action and what is it acting on. When we get back to line 6 does not look like line 6 of the pseudocode anymore. It looks like this line 6 here, which is resolved. Okay, we have all the values already resolved at this point. In other words, the verb or the action we are performing is E14. We are performing the action on C4, and we're going to put the result into C16. Is that okay? The three components, what we are doing it to, and what is the result of that action. So what we do here is first of all, we have to calculate what we are returning. We are returning 1 plus 2 times n minus 1. This n cannot be referring to column F because it is already deallocated by the time we get to row 16 of the trace. So this n has to be referring to column D, which has a value of 2. So we are calculating what is 1 plus 2 times 2 minus 1, which is 4. Okay? We are, in other words, we are returning 4. That's the action I'm trying to perform. When you return 4, you have to find out what is the return info cell, which is C4 in this case. Copy and paste it. Change the question marks to the value that we are actually returning, which is 4, and that's it. That's what the return statement is supposed to do. And, yep, what question? Okay. Then we go to line 8. Line 8 is the end of the subroutine. We deallocate the columns that we allocated for this invocation, and then we have to use the return info to tell us where to go back to. This tells me to go back to line 9. So we go back to line 9, and line 9 looks like this now. There's nothing else we have to perform. We just have to print the value of 4. And that's it. We're done. Are there any questions about the trace? You guys are lucky. Your trace is much easier than the trace of the Monday, Wednesday class. That would be a good homework assignment for you guys, is to just make it just a little bit more complicated than this one, as a practice. So I think that's probably what I will have you guys to do as your next homework assignment. So let me save this one first so that the solution is saved, and then what we'll do is I'll give you your next homework assignment on the fly right now. We'll call this, subroutine S2, ival n. And they have it, in a strange way. I'm trying to debate whether I should do it, the same way or not. We'll just do it this way. That's fine. Okay. So in this one, we are going to have, 2 invocations on the line of the return. So this way, we want to see, how to deal with it. The example of Fibonacci also has the 2 invokes on the same line of the return. So this is not much different from that. It's just a little bit different. if n equals to 0, we return a particular value. I don't really care what I'm returning. This is not going to do anything particularly useful. Else return invoke s2 with n minus 1 to specify n plus invoke s2 n minus 1 to specify n. I'll just add 1 to it, I mean, just so that it's not the same as any other program I have written. Okay. And that's going to be your new homework assignment. That's the subroutine. It's going to be a little bit more tedious than the previous one, but in terms of the mechanism of invoking a subroutine, it's all the same. You should not change the way you handle the return statement. And outside, we'll just go ahead and say print the result of invoke s2, and we'll just use 2 to specify n. Using 3 is going to be an overkill. It's just going to be very, very tedious if I specify 3. So 2 is pretty much all we want to deal with. Save as. I'll just call it S2. Put it into the folder of today's folder. And make a new homework assignment out of it. I will put it under here. Two invokes. Are there any general questions about, these homework assignments? No? Okay. And let's have a week to do it and make this a 50-point homework assignment. Make it due right before the class, so that would be 10:30. That's it. So here you have your new homework assignment. It is close enough to the one that we have just did, so it's an extension to that. It should not be a really big surprise. Yep.
Is the solution to the previous homework assignment going to be uploaded to today?
I put it into the folder.
Okay.
If I remember to zip it up and upload it, it should be there.
Okay.
Yep. Do we know how to deal with this with 2 invokes on the same line? Have we seen that before?
I think you did an example.
Yep. It's one of the first examples too. Yep. So you have to remember each invocation is individual. You cannot just combine the 2 invocations into one. But tag, why not? Because it's going to return the same value. Well, it's not guaranteed. Okay. Let me just give you one example of how I can make a subroutine so that 2 different calls or 2 different invocations, each one will return a different value. Okay. It's actually pretty easy to do it. Okay.